You would have guessed it by now. This clip is from the famous Indian movie Black. But I'm not going to talk about this movie or its actors. Hello, viewers. This is Anuradha. Kindness is a language which the deaf can hear and the blind can see. This is so beautifully thought and quoted by someone. Well, history is a testimony of extraordinary individuals who have stood against time and shown that limitations, whether physical, social, or mental, are not obstacles to greatness. These individuals have inspired millions to push their own limits, proving that greatness is not defined by what you lack, but by what you are willing to overcome. In this video, we'll explore the remarkable journey of Helen Keller's life. Stay tuned to discover how Helen Keller turned her greatest challenge into a mission that continues to impact the world even today. The clip that we showed you, this movie is inspired by the story of Helen Keller's life. Helen Keller, who was born in 1880 in Alabama to a wealthy family, was a typical healthy and normal child. Unfortunately, she was struck by an illness believed to be scarlet fever or meningitis at just 19 months of age. This illness left Helen both deaf and blind, plunging her world into complete silence and darkness forever. Her inability to see, hear, or communicate led to immense frustration, and she often expressed herself through tantrums and physical actions. She would scream, yell, kick, lie on the floor, pinch, grab food, and displayed a wild behavior. Her family struggled to muddle through, but were determined to find a way to help her. Helen, who was now 6 years old, was going to experience a miracle in her life. It was at this time that the family connected with a woman named Anne Sullivan, a remarkable teacher who would go on to change Helen's life forever. Anne Sullivan, once blind herself, got her vision back through a surgery. She was also a graduate from the Perkins School for the Blind in Boston. Living off her own experience, Anne knew that though this was a daunting task, she would be able to help Helen live a full life. She was brought in by the family when Helen was just 6 years old and remained Helen's companion for the next 50 years. When Anne first arrived, Helen was trapped in frustration, unable to communicate due to her blindness and deafness. Anne immediately started working on correcting Helen's wild behavior in the house. She took Helen in a carriage around their house several times, infusing a false belief in Helen's mind that she was away from her mother and was now totally dependent on her teacher. Anne started by teaching Helen words using the sense of touch. She traced one letter at a time on her palms and made Helen repeat the tracing movements. Helen mimicked the motion but couldn't grasp its meaning. The turning point occurred one day at a water pump where Anne placed one of Helen's hands under flowing water while spelling the letters WATER into her other hand, one at a time. At that moment, Helen connected the sensation of water with the letters being spelled. This was a breakthrough which ignited a hunger in Helen to learn more about the world around, and she learned 30 new words that day. Her frustrations reduced gradually as Anne incorporated discipline and patience in her behavior and channeled her frustration into learning. Anne used consistent communication by spelling words into Helen's hands for every object, action, and concept. This method proved to be revolutionary. By the age of 10, Helen could not only read but could also use a typewriter. she was also introduced to the Braille system meant for the visually impaired. Helen had another teacher named Sarah Fuller who helped her learn to talk. Sarah used the vibrations of words on her own lips, and Helen gradually learned how to feel sound vibrations and also learn how to move her own lips to make her own sounds. Pretty amazing, isn't it? At the age of 16, Helen went to Radcliffe College in Massachusetts, and Anne went with her. She helped Helen to listen to the lectures by signing the teacher's words into her hands. In 1904, Helen graduated with honors, which was a groundbreaking achievement for a deaf and blind individual. While studying, Helen wrote many articles about her experiences, which were published in magazines, and this generated a lot of curiosity amongst people to know more about her life. Later, in honor of her teacher Anne, Helen also wrote a book titled Teacher, which was a tribute to Anne Sullivan. She called Anne Sullivan the miracle worker who transformed her life from one of isolation to one with unusual accomplishments. Let us now list some of Helen Keller's selfless deeds. In collaboration with the American Foundation for the Blind, Helen worked towards raising money, improving education, employment, and accessibility, especially for the deaf and blind individuals. Traveling across 35 countries and meeting world leaders for the upliftment of underprivileged regions, her speeches generated a lot of awareness towards the importance of inclusivity. She was not only a voice to standardize Braille, but was also an advocate of equality, which extended beyond disability rights to include women's suffrage, labor rights, and racial equality. Helen's work during and after the World Wars focused on supporting veterans who had lost their sight and hearing. She received numerous accolades, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1964 and election to the National Women's Hall of Fame. Well deserved. To sum it up, Helen Keller's story proves that with determination, belief, and hard work, you can rewrite the script of your life no matter where you start and when you start. Thank you so much.
Will you not constitute yourselves as knights of the blind in the crusade against darkness? Thank you.